ranking where all the free agent running backs ended up signing. A little bit of a shakeup here. I've already talked about Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley on episode 67 when I had Bryce Lewis on. That's going to be 1A, 1B for me. Whether you want to put Saquon or Derrick Henry, I don't really care. Feels like Saquon has more of the upside. Derrick Henry has the better deal. Both of them go to teams that are going to be competing within their respective conferences. And we'll go from the 2 to the 7 as we had Joe Mixon to the Texans, Aaron Jones to the Vikings, Austin Eckler to the Commanders, and a few more. At number 2, I'm going to put Joe Mixon to the Texans. The Texans have been making some good moves this offseason, whether it's been here with Joe Mixon. Obviously, they brought Danielle Hunter in. We're going to talk about that specific move later on in the show. But Joe Mixon to the Texans is going to be a great addition for them. CJ Stroud's going to have that comfort of having Joe Mixon in the backfield. And we know that CJ was already a solid quarterback last year, but I do believe the Texans could improve at running the football some with actually getting that star back in the backfield for them. And, of course, I don't have the Texans depth chart with who they have in the backfield at the moment. Going to pull that up. And they're dealing with, obviously, Dameon Pierce, who isn't bad. They've also got J.J. Taylor and Jared Dokes as well, it looks like. So clearly Joe Mixon's going to be the RB1 there. He pops right into a system that needed some running back assistance within the offense. And I think Joe Mixon could potentially go on and have some of his best years. He's already had some great years, multiple 1,000-yard seasons, some double-digit touchdown seasons as well with Cincinnati. And when you put Joe Mixon with the Texans, it's just going to add another element to that offense. Again, that comfort for CJ Stroud, going to take the pressure off some certain parts. And I believe Joe Mixon is kind of like that Alvin Kamara, or I think a better comparison, that Christian McCaffrey light, like an Austin Eckler, who can come out of the backfield, whether it's on a sweep, whether it's on a zone read, they're going to run in multiple different aspects or be able to receive the ball. Number 3, Josh Jacobs to the Green Bay Packers. And this does feel like an upgrade from Aaron Jones. I'm a fan of Aaron Jones. I think he's a very solid running back, also kind of like Joe Mixon and Christian McCaffrey as well, just not at that level of Christian McCaffrey, but can run the football in multiple scenarios, can be a very solid running back, or a receiving back as well. And when you put Josh Jacobs with the Packers, knowing that he had those multiple 1,000-yard seasons under the roughness of Josh McDaniels, with having Derek Carr as his quarterback, with a lot of that controversy and instability that it feels like we've seen with the Raiders and coming out of the season that they had last year, knowing that he hasn't been in the best build and has still succeeded, I can't wait to see what he does with a team here like the Packers, who's coming off of a great season. We know what Jordan Love just was. Aaron Jones was solid there. But again, I believe this is an upgrade, probably more on the rushing aspect. He can still receive the ball as well. But I think Aaron Jones, who has departed, is better in that aspect. But I love the plugging in here of Josh Jacobs. Just going to provide more of that rush yards per game, more of those rushing touchdowns, more of that physical wear on the defense. And that's what Josh Jacobs is. I feel like he's one of the few actual between the tackles, ton of carries on the season, bell cow back out there, one of the few left, of course, next to Derrick Henry. At number 4, I'm going to do Aaron Jones to the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones goes from the Packers over to the Vikings. He stays in the division rival. And the reason I have this one so low, it might feel low for some of you. The Vikings have to figure out what's going on with their quarterback. Yes, they've got Aaron Jones. They've got Justin Jefferson. They've got TJ Hawkinson. They've got Jordan Addison. They've got Kevin O'Connell, who did very well in his season there and is going to continue to support this team and push them along in his coaching tenure. Aaron Jones will more than likely succeed at a high level in this offense. We know that Dalvin Cook just came from here. We know that Alexander Mattison just left this organization as well. And both of those guys always had good production. We know that Alexander Mattison was in there backing up Dalvin Cook. And I'm going to say Aaron Jones is a fall off from Dalvin Cook, but I do think he is an upgrade from Alexander Mattison. So shout out to the Vikings for going out and getting him, because Aaron Jones is still capable of being one of the top backs in the league. I don't know if I would say, 3 to 5. I think he could flirt with that 5 spot, maybe around the 6 or the 7 spot as well. But Aaron Jones, very solid pickup here for the Minnesota Vikings. Number 5, DeAndre Swift to the Bears. This might feel a little high for some of you, but I feel better about the Bears than I do the Commanders and the Titans, which is kind of a sneak peek at the next 2 teams that are coming up here for the rankings on where all these NFL free agent running backs went. DeAndre Swift just had a solid season with the Philadelphia Eagles, over 1,000 yards rushing, was able to keep that up from what Miles Sanders did in Philadelphia. And of course, we see the Eagles go out and grab Saquon Barkley. And most of the league would probably take Saquon over DeAndre Swift, maybe not for the amount of money, because we know how Saquon has struggled a little bit with the health. But DeAndre Swift just had a solid season. I always thought DeAndre Swift was a fairly good running back with the Detroit Lions, they were just able to ship him out. Obviously, we see the trade. I believe it was within the draft, and DeAndre Swift goes on and has some of his best, really his best year as a running back and as a player. And it's not to say that he wasn't good in Detroit, but Detroit wasn't necessarily setting him up for success and putting him in those right situations to succeed as much of a level as he did in Philly. Now, of course, Philly has that offensive line that not many people in the NFL, they are missing Jason Kelsey, not many people in the NFL are going to be able to, to hang with. But I think DeAndre Swift to the Bears, knowing that Keenan Allen's coming in, knowing that it is a lock for Caleb Williams to come in now, Justin Fields is out of town. They bring in Gerald Everett. This is going to be a good piece for this offense. At number 6, give me Austin Eckler to the Commanders. Feels low for me because of who Austin Eckler is as a player. Again, he is that Joe Mixon. He is that Aaron Jones, kind of a lesser version of the Christian McCaffreys of the league that can be that dual threat back. Austin Eckler, over the last 3 seasons, outside of quarterbacks, has led the NFL in scrimmage touchdowns. He's got 40. And you look between rushing, between receiving, how he's able to be clutch in certain games. He's one of the best dual threat backs in the NFL. But I'm nervous because Cliff Kingsbury is his offensive coordinator and Dan Quinn is his head coach. Who's the quarterback right now? Sam Howell, I believe, is now a Seattle Seahawk. The Commanders are going to be in the runnings for a quarterback. We know that they pick towards the tops of the league. So will they go after a Drake May? Will they possibly trade up to 1 and get a Caleb Williams? Don't believe that's the thing. Is Jaden Daniels going to be there? Do we take a chance on a Michael Penix? I believe Jaden Daniels, Drake May is probably going to be that quarterback to pick for them. I would love to have Austin Eckler to the Commanders higher on this list, but it does worry me with his head coach and his offensive coordinator. And at number 7, Tony Pollard to the Titans. Now, the Titans are starting to stack up. I think Tony Pollard's going to have some nice compliments with what we're going to be able to see from Will Levis in a full year, too, with DeAndre Hopkins and now, of course, Calvin Ridley on the outside as well. We're going to talk about that. Talk about that Calvin Ridley move towards the end of the show. But Tony Pollard comes in to replace Derrick Henry. We know the Titans have been great at running the football over the last half decade. Tony Pollard is not Derrick Henry, but he is respectable back. I think he has that capability to show that he's a running back one. He's probably going to get his most carries, his biggest workload here as the RB1. We know he was warming up to some of that with the Dallas Cowboys as Zeke Elliott moved out and as he was the running back, and who seemed to have the hot hand at times when Ezekiel Elliott wasn't producing or he was not in the game due to whatever reason. Brian Callahan is here. That rushing scheme is still here. There's still some key pieces here. Obviously, Derrick Henry missing is a big one. Of course, Mike Vrabel missing is another one. But Tony Pollard's going to find success in this offense. It might not be the prettiest, which is why I have it down lower here on the list. But ranking all the NFL free agent running backs for the shakeup in 2024 NFL free agency, 1A, 1B is Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Number 2, Joe Mixon to the Texans. Number 3, Josh Jacobs to the Packers. 4, Aaron Jones to the Vikings. 5, DeAndre Swift to the Bears. 6, Austin Eckler to the Commanders. And 7, Tony Pollard to the Titans.